Hello everyone and welcome to Whatculture. I'm Josh, joined today by Ewan Parsons. Say hello, Ewan.
Hello.
Because as we gear up for DC Fandom, the big event celebrating everything DC related, we've had a double dose of Batman news essentially. We had the lovely poster and logo for Matt Reeves as the Batman last night, but then just afterwards and kind of out the blue, the news was reported that Ben Affleck might be returning as Batman himself for the upcoming Flash movie. Ewan, you have more information for me because this has genuinely made me quite excited.
Yes, I mean, various Hollywood trades reported this yesterday, but in particular, Vanity Fair basically said that Ben Affleck will be reprising the role of Batman in Andrew Muschietti's Flash movie, which is going to release in June 2020. So that is very exciting given, all the interest that's been put into, the Justice League movie for some reason, 3 years after its release. And obviously, there is a degree of regret over the way that Ben Affleck's Batman movie kind of panned out. It was a lot of hype that accompanied the idea that he would be directing a film as well as starring it, and then obviously he departed that due to personal issues. But yeah, now we know that he actually got the script last week and then agreed to it this week. So now we have that kind of the Batman that is familiar to Ezra Miller's Flash is going to obviously be anchoring the story. And Andy Muschietti actually, he gave an interview for Vanity Fair saying that he's a very substantial part of the emotional impact of the movie. The interaction and relationship between Barry and Affleck's Wayne will bring an emotional level that we haven't seen before. It is Barry's movie, it's Barry's story, but their characters are more related than we think. They both lost their mothers to murder, and that's one of the emotional vessels of the movie, and that's where the Affleck Batman kicks in. And also, in the story, which I thought was pretty interesting and is the most exciting part for me as someone who's really looking forward to Michael Keaton being in this film, is that apparently his part is going to be substantial. So I did think potentially that when we had the earlier reports, he's going to have a big role in the film and stuff, I was like, is he though? Is it going to be kind of like just a brief cameo to kind of get everyone excited? But no, it looks as though he's going to have a very substantial part in the movie. And it makes sense for practicality's sake as well, I would argue, for Affleck to have a role in here, given he is the Batman of this Flash's world.
Yeah, 100%. Like, when it comes to Ben Affleck's Batman, even though I wasn't a huge fan of the movies he was in, I always thought he was like really good in the role, especially when you could tell that he cared about what he was, the material that he had. So to see that kind of like get a proper send-off, hopefully, a final kind of, farewell to that character rather than just sort of being unceremoniously dropped and that entire universe being replaced or kind of like compartmentalized. Like, that is something I didn't expect and something that I'm quite excited for, especially because, like you said, with Michael Keaton's Batman in here, I was wondering how they were kind of going to juggle all of these different factors. Who was going to be the emotional focus? Who was going to be kind of like the main through line of these different universes they're presumably jumping through? And I think Ben Affleck's Batman is a really great choice for that. And I never thought I would be excited to see Affleck back in the role, even though, like I said, I enjoyed it. But when I saw this news break last night, it got me excited for this movie, and I feel like every single thing that they're saying about it makes me intrigued. But that's perhaps because I'm not a huge Flash fan, and I feel like every little bit of news that comes out about this movie is about anyone other than the main character, more or less. Like, we had the Michael Keaton stuff, we've got the Ben Affleck stuff, and even though the director is saying there that it's very much, the Flash's film, everything is kind of centered around him, and he's like the main conduit, obviously. I don't know, it's an interesting way to go about marketing this film, especially because, do we even know if Ezra Miller's still signed on for it? Because, right, okay, cool.
They appear to have, whatever has been going on aside, he is kind of still locked down to play Barry Allen in this film. And it raises some weird points, like you said. Like, I've mentioned this in previous videos we've covered about the Flash movie and how ever since we learned that it was going to be an adaptation of 2011's Flashpoint comic, I was kind of, weirded out by that, because Flashpoint was an event story that was primarily implemented to reboot the DC universe in the comics, which gave way to the New 52. It's not necessarily, it is a Flash story, don't get me wrong, but it is also a heavily Batman-themed oriented story. It involves Barry basically finding the Flashpoint Batman, who in this world is Thomas Wayne, and him getting that anchor to then try and correct the timeline or whatever. I'm looking every time I look at this film, I'm like, yes, this is cool. I'm excited that X person is in this movie, but also at that point in me, I get brought back to that initial part of like, if I was going to do a Flash movie, I probably wouldn't do it about Flashpoint, and it's difficult for me to get excited too much because at the same time I'm like, yes, Michael Keaton's Batman's coming back. That's so cool. And then we have this Batman with Ben Affleck and stuff. And I don't know. There are interesting implications of this film. I guess you could say I'm less excited and more interested to see how it plays out because, as the Vanity Fair report kind of echoes, the film is kind of with its multiverse approach is almost looking at the cycle of reboots and remakes in comic book movies and how Warner Brothers can almost subvert that expectation by basically going, well, they all exist in the same universe, really, the same multiverse. Yeah. And obviously, while, we as outsiders or commentators can look into that and go when they, inevitably do another Batman movie without Robert Pattinson in, 10, 15 years or whatever, we could look at that and go, well, that is a reboot. In Warner Brothers' eyes, they can basically just say, well, no, this takes place on Earth 55, and this is still in continuity with the previous interpretations. And the Vanity Fair report mentioned specifically they're trying to end factionalism within the fandom, which again, it's interesting that they're taking those kind of issues into account, especially in light of what we've had with the whole Snyder Cut fiasco and the way that, DC fans have basically, convinced the studio to pursue that. So it's interesting to see that they're trying to get ahead of the curve and doing their best to placate a fandom, which again, it raises all sorts of implications. I don't know how you kind of feel about that, but it's weird to me.
Yeah, it's weird because I suppose we've not really seen anything like this before. Like, you know what I mean? Like you mentioned there, even in the past, when something might not have been marketed as like a clean reboot or something, there is very much a delineation between the different kind of like universes, the different franchises, the different worlds, the different fandoms within those worlds. So to kind of, it's what I think, I'm just going through all of this in my brain right now, but the way I look at it is, in the best case scenario, this means that we are able to kind of have a bunch of diversified different like subsets of the DC universe, have a bunch of different movies, don't just kind of have this one homogenous idea of what a superhero, a DC superhero movie kind of can be, and then hopefully like the fans can get on board and more importantly, understand that because, when it comes to movie and comic book nerds, we can easily grasp the idea of a multiverse, but that's still relatively new and like hasn't really been done on this level in a cinematic way before. And to me, I'm just kind of like looking at the best case scenario of this means we get to have all of these different things existing side by side, potentially even occasionally kind of informing each other via kind of like crossovers and stuff, and that might get bloated and that might get kind of a bit too fussy towards the end. But if that means we can get, Matt Reeves' Batman, even Todd Phillips' Joker, which I didn't love, like all happening and existing, and you can have these directors coming in and trying new things. Like I'm up for that, especially when you can have a Flash movie that I wouldn't have been interested in that much before. Feel like this big event, feel like this kind of, hopefully, a celebration of the wider DC universe and also a commentary on, like you said, the nature of reboots and rebrandings and franchises in general. Like if they make that kind of theme part of the subtext or the text of the flick, I think that would make for a really kind of fascinating movie in and of itself, not just a superhero movie, because that commentary is kind of like so new and original and kind of something that a lot of movies I think would kind of shy away from. I've said kind of quite a lot there, but I hope you get my point.
Yeah, no, I totally kind of echo what you just said there. At the end of the day, I think if they can find a way to make this a celebration of the DC universe, that'll be something really special. And, Flash is better suited to do that than other characters in the sense that, he can mess around with the time stream. And he does have that, especially since, going all the way back to, the 1980s with Crisis on Infinite Earths, he has been fundamentally, kind of woven into the fabric of the multiverse itself. He was there when DC kind of called all their alternate Earths, and he was there when they kind of came back as well. So, it is quite, thematically poetic in the sense that we're getting that now. And, his first big screen solo outing will be about that. I'm just curious to see how it all plays out. I'm interested, obviously, to see Michael Keaton back as Batman. In my opinion, the best live-action interpretation of the character. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the different aspects of it, and hopefully, you know, we'll get lots of goodies. But at the same time, for Flash fans, I am curious to, you know, the diehard Flash fans, I'm curious to see how they feel about all of this, whether they're content with Batman, you know, kind of busting in and stealing the limelight. But yeah.
100%. Like, I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you think Ben Affleck's casting and Michael Keaton returning has made you more excited for this movie? Or are you a bit worried that it's going to again become the Batman show and other characters that deserve their time in the solo limelight might get overshadowed once again? I don't know where I fall on it. I think it makes me more excited, but like we say, I'm not a huge Flash fan, but yeah, let us know down in the comments. And while you're there, if you could, give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't, though, you can follow my ramblings on Twitter at the handle Josh Brune with 2 O's, and you can follow Ewan on Twitter at
Ewan Ruins Things.
And we will see you soon. Maybe if a 3rd Batman gets announced for the Flash movie.
They'll bring back Adam West. They'll bring him back.